A journey of 1,000 years ago. Ladies and gentlemen, imagine a world untouched by modern technology, where the rhythm of life was dictated by the rising and setting sun, and knowledge was passed down through parchment, scrolls, and word of mouth. Today, we embark on a journey back in time, 1,000 years into the past, to witness the wonders, struggles, and triumphs of those who came before us. Ladies and gentlemen, today, we embark on an extraordinary journey, a journey that transcends time and takes us back 1,000 years. Imagine standing on the threshold of history, looking back into a world vastly different from our own, yet deeply connected to who we are today. 1,000 years is not just a measurement of time. It is a bridge between the past and the present, carrying with it stories of civilizations, triumphs, struggles, and the indomitable spirit of humanity. As we step back into this distant era, let us not merely think of it as a time of kings and warriors, of scholars and traders, but as a living, breathing world where people, just like us, woke up each morning with dreams, hopes, and fears. They may not have had the luxuries we enjoy today, yet their resilience, ingenuity, and desire to build a better future laid the foundation for the world we now call home. 1,000 years ago, the world was filled with grand empires and thriving civilizations, each unique in its customs, traditions, and knowledge. Some of these cultures reached the height of their golden ages, making groundbreaking advancements in art, science, and philosophy. Others struggled through conflict and hardship, leaving behind lessons that echo through time. Their choices, their actions, and their beliefs shaped the course of history in ways they could not have imagined, just as our decisions today will shape the future 1,000 years from now. So let us travel back in time, not merely as observers, but as seekers of wisdom. Let us explore what life was like for those who walked this earth before us, uncovering the innovations they pioneered, the challenges they faced, and the legacies they left behind. As we journey through the past, we will find that despite the centuries that separate us, the human experience remains remarkably similar. The story of 1,000 years ago is not just about history, it is about us. It is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, the boundless potential of the human mind, and the ever-evolving journey of civilization. Let us take this step together, immersing ourselves in the wonders of the past, as we uncover the rich and fascinating world of a millennium ago, 1,000 years ago. The world was a vastly different place, yet in many ways, it mirrored the realities of our own time. Life was shaped by the land people lived on, the rulers who governed them, and the traditions that bound them together. There were no modern conveniences, no electricity, no rapid transportation, no internet to connect distant lands in an instant. Instead, life was slower, dictated by the natural rhythms of the seasons, the availability of resources, and the demands of survival. In villages and rural communities, most people lived simple lives as farmers, craftsmen, or traders. Agriculture was the backbone of society, with entire families working the fields to produce enough food for survival. Without modern machinery, plowing the land was a labor-intensive process, often done with wooden plows pulled by oxen. The success or failure of a harvest meant the difference between abundance and famine, and the unpredictability of nature played a crucial role in daily life. In the great cities of the time, life bustled with energy and diversity. Markets were filled with merchants selling spices, textiles, pottery, and other goods. Artisans and blacksmiths crafted tools, weapons, and intricate jewelry, while scholars gathered in schools and libraries, preserving and expanding the knowledge of their age. Temples, mosques, and churches stood at the heart of many cities, serving as centers of faith, learning, and community gatherings. Society was rigidly structured, with strict social hierarchies defining a person's role in life. Nobles and monarchs ruled vast territories, while knights and warriors maintained order through loyalty and warfare. At the same time, commoners worked tirelessly to sustain the economy. In some regions, slavery and serfdom were widespread, with entire populations bound to the land or to their masters, their fates decided by the ruling elite. Communication was slow and often unreliable. Messages were carried by horseback or by messengers who traveled for days or even weeks to deliver important news. The written word was precious, with books painstakingly copied by hand onto parchment or papyrus. The majority of people were illiterate, relying on oral tradition to pass down stories, laws, and history. Despite the hardships, life was not without joy, art, and entertainment. People celebrated festivals with music and dance, gathered around fires to tell stories, and expressed their beliefs through elaborate rituals and ceremonies. Poets and bards composed songs that told of legendary heroes, and artists created paintings, sculptures, and grand architectural marvels that still stand as testaments to human creativity. 1,000 years ago, the world was full of contrasts: war and peace, prosperity and poverty, ignorance and wisdom. Though life was difficult and uncertain, people found ways to thrive, adapt, and create a future for their children. It was an age of both struggle and progress, where the seeds of our modern world were quietly taking root. 1,000 years ago, the world was a mosaic of powerful empires, flourishing kingdoms, and thriving cultural centers. Across continents, civilizations rose to prominence, shaping history through their advancements in governance, warfare, art, and knowledge. Though separated by geography, these societies were connected in ways that would influence the course of human history for centuries to come. In the East, the Song dynasty ruled over China, marking a period of remarkable innovation and economic prosperity. The Chinese were pioneers in science, engineering, and commerce, developing technologies that were far ahead of their time. Gunpowder, the magnetic compass, and advanced printing techniques were just some of the groundbreaking achievements that emerged during this era. The cities of China were bustling centers of trade, filled with skilled artisans, scholars, and merchants who contributed to the empire's wealth and stability. The Grand Canal, one of the most impressive engineering marvels of its time, facilitated the movement of goods and people, connecting the northern and southern parts of the empire. To the west, the Byzantine Empire stood as the last remnant of the once mighty Roman Empire. Centered in Constantinople, this empire was a beacon of wealth, culture, and military strength. The Byzantines preserved and expanded upon the knowledge of the ancient Greeks and Romans, safeguarding priceless manuscripts and contributing to the fields of law, medicine, and architecture. Their capital, Constantinople, was one of the most magnificent cities in the world, adorned with grand cathedrals, palaces, and marketplaces. The Byzantine rulers, known for their intricate court politics and diplomacy, managed to withstand threats from both European and Middle Eastern forces, ensuring their empire's survival for centuries. In the heart of the Islamic world, the Abbasid Caliphate had once been the center of intellectual and cultural achievements. While political power had begun to fragment by this time, the legacy of the Islamic Golden Age endured. Cities like Baghdad, Cairo, and Cordoba were thriving hubs of learning, where scholars made groundbreaking advancements in mathematics, astronomy, and medicine. The House of Wisdom in Baghdad had attracted some of the greatest minds of the age, translating ancient Greek and Persian texts and expanding the world's understanding of science and philosophy. The influence of Islamic civilization stretched from Spain to India, shaping art, architecture, and governance across vast territories. In Europe, the medieval kingdoms were emerging from the shadow of the so-called Dark Ages. The Holy Roman Empire, under rulers like Otto III, sought to revive the legacy of ancient Rome while maintaining strong ties to the Catholic Church. In France and England, feudalism was the dominant system, where lords and vassals controlled vast lands, and knights swore allegiance to their kings in exchange for protection and land. Castles and fortresses dotted the landscape, serving as both military strongholds and symbols of power. The Christian Church wielded immense influence over the people, guiding both political and spiritual life. Further north, the Vikings, who had once terrorized the coasts of Europe with their raids, were beginning to settle and integrate into the societies they had once attacked. Norse explorers had already reached as far as North America, establishing settlements in what they called Vinland. In Scandinavia, Viking rulers were consolidating power, transitioning from warrior raiders to monarchs who sought to build lasting kingdoms. In the vast landscapes of Africa, the Ghana Empire was thriving as a powerful center of trade and wealth. Located in present-day West Africa, Ghana controlled the lucrative trans-Saharan trade routes, dealing in gold, salt, and ivory. Caravans traveled across the desert, linking the empire with North African and Middle Eastern merchants, who brought textiles, books, and new ideas. The influence of Islam was beginning to take root in the region, blending with local traditions to create a unique cultural and religious landscape. Across the ocean, in the Americas, the great civilizations of the Maya, Toltec, and Mississippians were building remarkable cities, temples, and trade networks. In Mesoamerica, the Toltecs had established a powerful state, influencing later civilizations like the Aztecs. The Maya, known for their advanced understanding of astronomy and complex calendar systems, continued to construct grand pyramids and ceremonial centers. Meanwhile, in North America, the Mississippian culture was reaching its peak, with cities like Cahokia boasting massive earthen mounds and organized societies supported by agriculture and trade. Each of these civilizations had its own unique contributions to history, yet they were all part of the broader human story. Their triumphs and struggles shaped the world as we know it today, leaving behind legacies that still inspire and influence us. Through trade, conquest, and cultural exchange, these great societies interacted with one another, spreading ideas and innovations that would continue to shape history for centuries to come. 1,000 years ago, the world was a place of remarkable discoveries and intellectual progress. Although technology and scientific understanding were not as advanced as they are today, great minds across different civilizations worked tirelessly to expand human knowledge. Innovations in various fields, medicine, astronomy, engineering, mathematics, and literature, were shaping societies in ways that will have lasting impacts on history. In China, the Song dynasty was at the forefront of technological advancements. One of the most revolutionary inventions of this period was gunpowder, a discovery that would eventually change the course of warfare forever. Though originally used for fireworks and religious ceremonies, gunpowder would later be adapted for military use, leading to the creation of cannons and firearms. Another critical innovation was movable type printing, which allowed for faster reproduction of books and texts. This technology, pioneered by Byzantine, significantly improved literacy and access to knowledge in China long before the printing press was developed in Europe. Additionally, the magnetic compass was refined during this period, making long-distance sea navigation more precise and paving the way for the age of exploration centuries later. In the Islamic world, scholars and scientists were making groundbreaking contributions to human knowledge. The House of Wisdom in Baghdad was a center of learning, where scholars translated and preserved ancient Greek, Persian, and Indian texts. Mathematicians like Al-Khwarizmi developed algebra, a system of mathematical calculation that remains fundamental to modern science and engineering. Astronomers such as Al-Biruni and Al-Tusi studied celestial bodies with incredible accuracy, refining earlier theories and laying the groundwork for later astronomical discoveries. Physicians like Ibn Sina, Avicenna, wrote medical encyclopedias that became standard texts in Europe for centuries. His book, The Canon of Medicine, detailed surgical techniques, disease treatments, and the importance of hygiene, ideas that were revolutionary for their time. In Europe, although the medieval period was often seen as an age of feudalism and limited scientific progress, intellectual movements were beginning to take shape. Monasteries played a vital role in preserving ancient knowledge, copying manuscripts by hand and maintaining libraries. Universities were starting to emerge, with centers of learning such as the University of Bologna in Italy and the University of Paris in France becoming important places for study. Scholars studied classical texts and engaged in philosophical debates, setting the foundation for the intellectual revival that would later lead to the Renaissance. Advances in architecture, such as the use of flying buttresses in Gothic cathedrals, allowed for the construction of towering churches with magnificent stained glass windows, demonstrating both artistic and engineering mastery. Meanwhile, in India, mathematicians were refining the decimal system and further developing the concept of zero, which had been introduced in earlier centuries. The influence of Indian mathematics spread across the Islamic world and into Europe, shaping the way numbers are used today. Indian astronomers were also making significant observations about planetary motion, while advancements in medicine and surgery, including the early use of surgical instruments, were improving healthcare. In Africa, the knowledge centers of Timbuktu and Cairo flourished as hubs of education. Libraries and universities in these cities attracted scholars from across the Islamic world, Africa, and Europe. The University of Al-Qarawiyyin in Morocco, founded earlier but thriving during this period, is recognized as one of the oldest universities in the world, providing education in science, medicine, and the humanities. West African societies were also developing sophisticated methods of agriculture, metallurgy, and trade, ensuring the prosperity of empires like Ghana and Mali. In the Americas, civilizations such as the Maya continued to excel in astronomy and mathematics. The Maya had developed an advanced calendar system based on precise astronomical observations, allowing them to predict celestial events with incredible accuracy. They also made significant strides in engineering, constructing massive temples and cities using intricate stonework without metal tools. The Inca civilization, though still in its early stages, would later master techniques in agriculture, irrigation, and road building that would allow them to dominate the Andean region. Throughout the world, despite differences in culture and geography, the thirst for knowledge was universal. Scholars, scientists, and inventors worked tirelessly to improve their societies, making discoveries that would shape future generations. Even without modern tools or scientific methods, their ingenuity and determination led to advancements that still influence our world today. 1,000 years ago, trade and exploration were the forces that linked distant civilizations, allowing the exchange of goods, knowledge, and culture across vast regions. Long before the modern era of globalization, merchants, sailors, and explorers played a crucial role in shaping the world by forging connections between empires, kingdoms, and distant lands. These trade networks not only facilitated economic prosperity, but also spread ideas, religious beliefs, and technological advancements, creating a rich tapestry of cultural interconnection. One of the most significant trade routes of this time was the Silk Road, a vast network of paths that connected China to the Middle East, India, and Europe. Along this route, merchants transported luxury goods such as silk, spices, precious stones, ceramics, and paper, making cities like Samarkand, Baghdad, and Constantinople thriving centers of commerce. The Silk Road was more than just a channel for trade. It was a conduit for knowledge and innovation. Through it, the Chinese inventions of papermaking, gunpowder, and printing found their way to the Islamic world and eventually to Europe. Likewise, ideas about mathematics, medicine, and astronomy traveled in the opposite direction, leading to significant intellectual advancements. In the Islamic world, the Indian Ocean Trade Network was a lifeline for commerce, connecting the Arabian Peninsula, East Africa, India, and Southeast Asia. The introduction of the lateen sail, a triangular sail that improved maneuverability, allowed Arab, Persian, and Indian sailors to navigate monsoon winds more effectively, making long-distance voyages more efficient. This maritime trade network carried gold, ivory, textiles, spices, and incense, helping cities such as Zanzibar, Cairo, and Calicut prosper. It also contributed to the spread of Islam, as traders introduced their religion and culture to coastal communities, leading to the establishment of new Muslim settlements and influences in regions like Indonesia and the Swahili coast. Meanwhile, in Africa, the trans-Saharan trade routes played a vital role in connecting the continent's interior with North Africa and the Mediterranean. Caravans of camels crossed the harsh desert, carrying gold, salt, and slaves between powerful West African kingdoms like Ghana and the Islamic states of North Africa. The demand for gold in Europe and the Middle East made African empires incredibly wealthy, and cities such as Timbuktu and Gao became famous centers of trade and learning. These routes also facilitated cultural exchanges as Islamic scholars traveled southward, influencing local governance, architecture, and religious practices. In medieval Europe, trade was gradually reviving after centuries of economic stagnation. The Hanseatic League, a powerful alliance of trading cities in northern Europe, emerged as a dominant force in commerce. Cities like Hamburg, Lübeck, and Bruges became major trading hubs, dealing in timber, furs, fish, and textiles. Meanwhile, in the Mediterranean, Italian city-states such as Venice and Genoa controlled maritime trade, acting as intermediaries between the Islamic world and Western Europe. These seafaring republics traded spices, silk, and exotic goods, enriching their economies and establishing the foundations of the Renaissance through their interactions with the knowledge of the East. Further north, the Vikings were among the most adventurous explorers of the time. Renowned for their daring sea voyages, they established trade routes that stretched from Scandinavia to the British Isles, France, Russia, and even as far as North America, where Norse explorers like Leif Erikson are believed to have reached the shores of present-day Canada. Their settlements in places like Iceland, Greenland, and Vinland, believed to be Newfoundland, show that they were not just raiders, but also skilled traders and explorers who sought new lands for settlement and commerce. Beyond the Old World, trade was also flourishing in the Americas. The Maya, Toltecs, and Mississippians had their own trade networks that connected different regions of North and Central America. The Maya, for instance, traded jade, cacao, obsidian, and feathers across vast distances, linking their cities with other cultures. In North America, the Mississippian culture developed large trading centers such as Cahokia, where goods from as far away as the Gulf of Mexico and the Great Plains were exchanged. These indigenous trade systems allowed societies to develop complex economies, establish political alliances, and share religious and artistic influences. The spirit of exploration was not just about economic gain. It was also driven by curiosity, ambition, and the desire to expand political influence. Rulers and merchants sought new lands for trade, while scholars and navigators mapped uncharted territories. The desire to explore the unknown led to the gradual expansion of human knowledge about geography, weather patterns, and foreign cultures, laying the groundwork for the great age of exploration that would follow in the centuries to come. Trade and exploration 1,000 years ago were the threads that wove the fabric of global civilization. They created pathways for cooperation, innovation, and cultural exchange, shaping the world in ways that are still visible today. 1,000 years ago, warfare was an ever-present reality, shaping the rise and fall of kingdoms and empires. Conflicts were fought for land, resources, power, and religious dominance, with rulers leading their armies into battle to secure their place in history. Unlike modern warfare, which relies on advanced technology, battles during this period were fought with swords, bows, spears, and primitive siege weapons. Strategies, fortifications, and alliances played critical roles in determining the outcomes of wars, and the impact of these conflicts echoed across generations. In Europe, warfare was largely defined by feudal armies, where knights, lords, and foot soldiers fought for their kings and nobles. The era saw the rise of castles as defensive strongholds, designed to protect territories from invaders. These fortresses, built with thick stone walls, towering battlements, and deep moats, made sieges long and grueling affairs. One of the most defining conflicts of this period was the Norman conquest of England in 1066, where William the Conqueror defeated King Harold II at the Battle of Hastings. This battle changed the course of English history, introducing Norman rule and reshaping the country's language, culture, and governance. Another major conflict in medieval Europe was the struggle between Christian and Muslim forces during the Reconquista, the long campaign to reclaim the Iberian Peninsula from Islamic rule. The region had been under Muslim control for centuries, but Christian kingdoms in the north gradually began pushing southward, leading to centuries of battles, shifting borders, and cultural exchanges between Christian and Islamic civilizations. Meanwhile, the rise of the Holy Roman Empire brought conflicts with neighboring kingdoms, as emperors sought to expand their influence. Warfare was often tied to political disputes with the Catholic Church, as popes and emperors clashed over authority. The investiture controversy, a power struggle over the right to appoint bishops, led to wars that shaped the balance of power between religious and secular rulers. Beyond Western Europe, the Byzantine Empire was engaged in near-constant warfare. Defending its capital, Constantinople, from external threats was a key priority. The Byzantines fought against the expanding Seljuk Turks, who would later play a significant role in the events leading to the Crusades. These wars drained the empire's resources and weakened its hold over its territories, leading to the gradual decline of Byzantine power. In the Islamic world, warfare was equally pivotal in shaping history. The Abbasid Caliphate, once the dominant power in the Middle East, was fragmenting due to internal strife and external invasions. The Fatimid Caliphate in North Africa and the Seljuk Empire in Persia emerged as major rivals, each vying for control over key cities such as Baghdad, Damascus, and Jerusalem. The Seljuks, in particular, expanded rapidly, defeating the Byzantines at the Battle of Manzikert in 1071, a battle that marked the beginning of Turkish dominance in Anatolia. This event would later be one of the triggers for the First Crusade, as Christian forces sought to reclaim the Holy Land from Muslim control. In China, the Song dynasty was constantly at war with northern nomadic tribes, particularly the Liao, Jin, and Western Xia dynasties. The Song had one of the most advanced military systems of the time, using gunpowder weaponry, crossbows, and warships to defend their territory. However, their struggles against the powerful northern states forced them to pay heavy tributes to maintain peace. This tension would eventually lead to the rise of the Mongols, who would later sweep across Asia and Europe in one of the most destructive military campaigns in history. In India, regional kingdoms were in constant competition, leading to numerous battles between Hindu and Islamic rulers. The Chola dynasty in the south launched naval expeditions, expanding its influence across Southeast Asia. Meanwhile, the Delhi Sultanate was beginning to take shape as Muslim rulers from Central Asia and Persia started making inroads into the Indian subcontinent, setting the stage for future centuries of conflict and cultural blending. In Africa, warfare was often tied to territorial expansion and control over trade routes. The Ghana Empire, one of the wealthiest states in West Africa, faced military pressure from rival states and nomadic Berber groups from the Sahara. These conflicts, along with shifts in trade patterns, eventually led to the empire's decline, paving the way for the rise of the Mali Empire. In East Africa, city-states along the Swahili coast had to defend themselves against raids from rival tribes and foreign invaders seeking control of their lucrative trade networks. In the Americas, warfare was an essential aspect of many civilizations. The Maya city-states frequently engaged in battles over resources, territory, and political power. Unlike European-style warfare, which often involved large, standing armies, Maya warfare relied on highly trained warriors, surprise attacks, and strategic alliances. The Toltecs, who rose to power in central Mexico, were known for their militaristic society, expanding their influence through conquest and intimidation. Further north, the Mississippian culture developed large, fortified cities, such as Cahokia, with palisades and earthworks built to defend against rival groups. Warfare during this era was brutal and unforgiving. Soldiers fought with swords, spears, and bows, often engaging in close combat. Armies relied on cavalry for swift attacks, while archers provided range support. In siege warfare, battering rams, catapults, and flaming projectiles were used to breach enemy fortifications. Battles were often fought not just for territorial conquest, but also for religious dominance, economic gain, and political control. Despite the destruction that wars brought, they also led to significant changes in societies. They reshaped borders, influenced technological advancements in weaponry and fortifications, and contributed to the blending of cultures as victors imposed their traditions on the conquered. The conflicts of 1,000 years ago laid the groundwork for future empires, shifting power dynamics that would continue to evolve over the centuries. 1,000 years ago, religion was at the heart of human civilization, shaping laws, governance, education, and daily life. Faith was not merely a private matter. It was deeply intertwined with politics, culture, and warfare. Religious leaders held immense influence over kings and emperors, while sacred texts guided societies in their moral and ethical frameworks. The spread of religious beliefs through trade, conquest, and missionary efforts created complex interactions between different faiths, sometimes leading to unity and cooperation, and at other times sparking conflicts that would shape history for centuries. In Christian Europe, the medieval church was the most powerful institution, wielding authority over both the common people and the ruling elite. The Catholic Church, led by the Pope in Rome, played a central role in governance, dictating policies and even excommunicating rulers who defied its will. Monasteries were centers of learning and preserved ancient knowledge, as monks meticulously copied religious and philosophical manuscripts. The church also enforced strict moral codes, influencing laws on marriage, social behavior, and justice. Pilgrimages to sacred sites, such as Canterbury in England or Santiago de Compostela in Spain, were common among the faithful, reflecting their deep devotion. During this period, the tension between Christian and Muslim worlds was increasing, leading to the Crusades, a series of religious wars fought over control of the Holy Land. The First Crusade was launched in 1095, when Pope Urban II called upon European Christians to take up arms and reclaim Jerusalem from Muslim rule. These campaigns would define relations between the two religions for centuries, fueling both cooperation and animosity across different cultures. Meanwhile, in the Islamic world, religion was a unifying force that spanned vast territories from Spain to India. Islamic scholars and theologians played a critical role in preserving and expanding knowledge, translating Greek, Persian, and Indian texts into Arabic. Cities such as Baghdad, Cordoba, and Cairo became centers of intellectual and spiritual growth. The different sects of Islam, primarily Sunni and Shia, were already established, and their theological differences occasionally led to political struggles. However, despite these divisions, Islamic civilization flourished, with religious scholars influencing law, sharia, governance, and social structures. Islam was also spreading rapidly through trade and missionary activities. In Africa, Islamic traders introduced the faith to West African kingdoms such as Ghana and later Mali, where it blended with local customs to create unique cultural expressions. The famous ruler Mansa Musa of Mali, who ruled in the 14th century but was part of this longer historical process, undertook a legendary pilgrimage to Mecca, demonstrating both his devotion and the growing influence of Islam in Africa. In India, Hinduism and Buddhism coexisted alongside the growing influence of Islam. Hinduism remained the dominant faith, with elaborate temple constructions, ritual practices, and a complex social hierarchy based on the caste system. Great Hindu empires, such as the Chola dynasty, built massive temples dedicated to deities like Shiva and Vishnu, reinforcing religious devotion through grand architecture and patronage of the arts. At the same time, Buddhism, though declining in India, remained influential in other parts of Asia, especially in Tibet, China, and Southeast Asia. Buddhist monks traveled great distances, spreading teachings and establishing monasteries that served as centers of learning and meditation. In China, religion took a different form. Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism played vital roles in shaping society. Confucianism, with its emphasis on duty, hierarchy, and morality, was deeply ingrained in governance and education. The civil service examination system was based on Confucian ideals, ensuring that government officials were well-versed in its teachings. Buddhism, which had entered China centuries earlier, remained influential, with temples and monasteries offering spiritual guidance. However, Buddhist institutions occasionally faced persecution, as some emperors viewed them as threats to state authority. Taoism, with its focus on harmony with nature and balance, also thrived, influencing Chinese medicine, philosophy, and the arts. In Japan, Shintoism and Buddhism coexisted, shaping the nation's cultural and spiritual landscape. Shinto, the indigenous faith of Japan, emphasized the worship of nature spirits, kami, and ancestral reverence. Buddhist teachings, introduced from China and Korea, added a philosophical and meditative dimension to Japanese spirituality. During this period, Zen Buddhism began to emerge, promoting simplicity, meditation, and self-discipline, values that would later influence the samurai warrior code. In Africa, indigenous religions continued to thrive alongside the spread of Islam and Christianity. Many African societies practiced animism, the belief that spirits inhabited natural elements such as rivers, mountains, and trees. Ancestral worship was also central to many cultures, as people sought guidance from their forebears through rituals and ceremonies. The fusion of indigenous beliefs with new religions led to unique spiritual traditions, as seen in the blending of Islamic practices with local customs in places like Mali and the Swahili coast. In the Americas, the great civilizations of the Maya, Toltecs, and Mississippians had rich religious traditions centered on polytheism and the worship of natural forces. Mayan priests were highly respected figures, conducting elaborate ceremonies to appease the gods and ensure cosmic balance. Astronomy played a crucial role in their religious beliefs, as they developed complex calendar systems based on celestial movements. Human sacrifices were an important part of many religious ceremonies, reflecting a belief that the gods required offerings to maintain order in the universe. Similarly, in North America, Native American tribes practiced diverse spiritual traditions, often centered around a deep connection to nature. Shamans and spiritual leaders guided their communities, interpreting visions, conducting healing rituals, and preserving sacred stories. Religion in this era was not just about faith, it was a guiding force that influenced laws, ethics, social structures, and even military campaigns. Whether through the spread of Islam along trade routes, the dominance of the Catholic Church in medieval Europe, or the spiritual philosophies of the East, religious beliefs shaped human civilization in profound ways. 1,000 years ago, art and architecture flourished across the world, reflecting the values, beliefs, and technological advancements of different societies. Despite the absence of modern tools and machinery, architects, sculptors, and artisans created breathtaking monuments, intricate paintings, and timeless literary works that continue to inspire people today. These artistic and architectural achievements were often deeply connected to religion, politics, and trade, symbolizing the power of empires, the devotion of believers, and the intellectual progress of civilizations. In Europe, medieval art was dominated by religious themes, as the Catholic Church was the primary patron of artists and architects. Romanesque architecture characterized the early medieval period, with its thick walls, rounded arches, and sturdy pillars, seen in the great churches and monasteries across the continent. As the centuries progressed, Gothic architecture emerged, revolutionizing construction with pointed arches, ribbed vaults, and towering stained-glass windows. Cathedrals such as Notre Dame in Paris and Chartres Cathedral were marvels of engineering, designed to inspire awe and devotion. Sculptors adorned churches with intricate carvings, depicting biblical scenes, saints, and mythical creatures, reinforcing the spiritual and educational role of religious institutions. Beyond architecture, medieval Europe saw the growth of illuminated manuscripts, handwritten books decorated with elaborate designs and illustrations. Monks and monasteries meticulously copied and illustrated texts, preserving knowledge and religious teachings. These manuscripts, often adorned with gold leaf and vibrant colors, were considered sacred treasures. Meanwhile, in literature, epic poems such as Beowulf and the Song of Roland captured the heroism and struggles of warriors, blending history and mythology in tales passed down for generations. In the Islamic world, art and architecture flourished under the influence of Islamic aesthetics and geometric design. Since Islam discouraged the depiction of human figures in religious art, artists developed exquisite patterns, arabesques, and calligraphy to decorate mosques, palaces, and manuscripts. The Great Mosque of Córdoba in Spain and the Alhambra in Granada showcase the elegance of Moorish architecture, with intricate stucco work, colorful tiles, and sprawling courtyards designed to create a sense of divine beauty. Persian and Arab calligraphers perfected the art of Arabic script, adorning Qurans, poetry, and official documents with breathtaking precision. Islamic civilization also produced rich literary works, with poets like Rumi and Omar Khayyam exploring themes of love, spirituality, and philosophy. 1001 Nights, a collection of folktales including the adventures of Aladdin, Sinbad, and Ali Baba, became one of the most famous literary masterpieces of all time, weaving together stories from Persian, Indian, and Arabic traditions. In India, the artistic and architectural landscape was shaped by Hindu, Buddhist, and Islamic influences. Temples such as Brihadeeswarar Temple in Tamil Nadu, built by the Chola dynasty, stood as testaments to the skill of Indian architects and sculptors. These structures featured elaborate carvings depicting gods, celestial beings, and mythological tales. Hindu temple architecture followed intricate mathematical and symbolic principles, ensuring that every element of the structure was in harmony with cosmic order. Buddhist art also thrived, particularly in the form of rock-cut caves and stupas. The Ajanta and Ellora caves, with their magnificent frescoes and sculptures, illustrated the life of the Buddha and scenes from Jataka tales. Meanwhile, Persian and Central Asian artistic styles began to influence Indian art as Islamic dynasties started establishing themselves in the subcontinent, setting the stage for the later fusion of Mughal and Indian architectural styles. In China, the Song dynasty, 960 to 1279, was a golden age for painting, ceramics, and poetry. Landscape painting reached new heights, with artists such as Fan Quan and Gua Shi mastering the depiction of mountains, rivers, and mist-shrouded valleys. These paintings, often created with delicate brushstrokes and ink washes, reflected the Confucian and Taoist ideals of harmony between humanity and nature. Porcelain production also flourished, with Song artisans perfecting the art of crafting fine ceramics, particularly the celadon glazed pottery that became highly prized in trade. Chinese literature thrived as well, with poets such as Su Shi writing about love, nature, and philosophy. Meanwhile, the printing press, which had been invented in China centuries earlier, allowed for the mass production of books, enabling the spread of knowledge and culture across the empire. In Japan, the Heian period, 794 to 1185, was a time of refined court culture, where art, poetry, and literature flourished. The aristocracy indulged in the creation of elegant calligraphy, painted scrolls, and poetic diaries. The most famous literary work of the era was The Tale of Genji by Murasaki Shikibu, considered the world's first novel. This masterpiece depicted the life and romances of an imperial prince, offering a glimpse into the sophisticated and aesthetic sensibilities of Heian court life. Meanwhile, Japanese temple architecture, influenced by both Chinese and indigenous styles, evolved to create serene and spiritually resonant structures, such as Baidoin Temple in Kyoto. In Africa, artistic expression was deeply rooted in spiritual beliefs and oral traditions. West African civilizations such as Ghana, Mali, and Benin produced stunning sculptures made of bronze, ivory, and gold, often depicting rulers, warriors, and deities. The city of Timbuktu, famous for its scholars and manuscripts, became a hub of Islamic learning and artistic expression. Meanwhile, in East Africa, the Swahili coast developed a unique architectural style blending African, Arab, and Persian influences, seen in the elaborate coral stone houses and mosques of cities like Kilwa and Zanzibar. In the Americas, the civilizations of the Maya, Toltecs, and Mississippians created monumental structures that demonstrated their engineering and artistic mastery. The Maya built towering pyramids and intricately carved stone stelae depicting kings, gods, and celestial events. Cities like Chichen Itza and Tikal featured observatories aligned with the stars, showcasing their advanced understanding of astronomy. The Toltecs, precursors to the Aztecs, crafted imposing warrior statues and temples adorned with serpent motifs. In North America, the Mississippian culture constructed massive earthen mounds, such as those at Cahokia, reflecting their spiritual beliefs and social organization. Across the world, art and architecture were not just about aesthetics. They were powerful symbols of cultural identity, religious devotion, and technological progress. From the grand cathedrals of Europe to the majestic temples of India, from the poetic masterpieces of China to the oral traditions of Africa, these achievements shaped the artistic heritage of humanity. 1,000 years ago, trade was the foundation of economic prosperity and cultural exchange, shaping the fate of nations and empires. In an era where kingdoms and civilizations relied on agriculture, craftsmanship, and commerce, the movement of goods across vast distances connected distant societies in ways that were both transformative and revolutionary. Trade routes stretched across continents, bringing not only material wealth, but also knowledge, technology, and ideas that would redefine the course of history. The Silk Road, the artery of global trade. One of the most famous trade networks of the medieval world was the Silk Road, a vast system of interconnected trade routes that linked China, Central Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. The Silk Road was not a single path, but rather a web of land and sea routes that facilitated the exchange of valuable commodities. Chinese silk, porcelain, and tea traveled westward, while from the Middle East and Europe, merchants brought glassware, spices, wool, and precious metals to the east. However, trade was not limited to goods alone. The Silk Road was also a highway of cultural exchange, spreading religion, science, art, and technology. Buddhism spread from India to China. Islamic knowledge of mathematics and astronomy reached Europe, and medical practices from Persia and Greece found their way into new civilizations. The movement of people, merchants, pilgrims, and scholars helped to shape the intellectual and spiritual landscape of the medieval world. The Indian Ocean trade, the maritime route of wealth. While land routes like the Silk Road were crucial, maritime trade was equally significant. The Indian Ocean trade network connected Africa, the Middle East, India, and Southeast Asia, enabling the large-scale movement of goods across the seas. Unlike land routes, which were often hindered by political conflicts and geographical barriers, maritime trade allowed for the transport of heavier goods such as spices, timber, textiles, gold, and ivory. Key trading hubs along this route included Kilwa and Mombasa in East Africa, Calicut and Gujarat in India, and Malacca in Southeast Asia. These cities became melting pots of cultures, where Arab, Indian, Persian, and Chinese merchants engaged in commerce and shared knowledge. The monsoon winds played a critical role in shaping this trade, as merchants carefully timed their voyages to align with seasonal wind patterns, ensuring smoother navigation across the ocean. This maritime network also played a role in the spread of Islam, as Muslim merchants and traders established settlements and mosques along the coasts of East Africa, India, and Southeast Asia. As a result, Islam became deeply embedded in the cultural and economic fabric of these regions. Medieval European trade and the growth of market economies. In medieval Europe, economic activity was largely centered around agriculture and feudalism, but trade played a crucial role in the growth of towns and cities. The Hanseatic League, a powerful alliance of merchant guilds and market towns in northern Europe, dominated trade across the Baltic and North Seas, dealing in goods such as fish, timber, furs, and textiles. Meanwhile, the Italian city-states of Venice, Genoa, and Florence became major centers of commerce, acting as intermediaries between the East and West. The Crusades also had a significant impact on trade. As European knights and soldiers traveled to the Middle East, they encountered new goods such as silk, spices, sugar, and exotic fruits. The demand for these luxuries grew, leading to increased trade between Europe and the Islamic world. Venetian and Genoese merchants took advantage of this new market, establishing powerful trading empires that controlled Mediterranean commerce. The emergence of money-based economies began to replace the traditional barter system. The use of coins and banking systems, pioneered by Italian merchants and Islamic traders, made long-distance trade more efficient. The introduction of credit, promissory notes, and letters of exchange allowed merchants to conduct business without carrying large amounts of gold, reducing the risk of theft and enabling the expansion of commerce. African trade networks and the wealth of kingdoms. In Africa, powerful kingdoms thrived on trade, particularly in gold, salt, ivory, and slaves. The trans-Saharan trade routes connected West Africa to North Africa and the Middle East, with camel caravans transporting goods across the vast desert. The Kingdom of Ghana, and later Mali and Songhai, became immensely wealthy due to their control of the gold and salt trade. The city of Timbuktu, located along these trade routes, became not only a commercial hub, but also a center of learning and culture. Merchants and scholars from across Africa and the Islamic world traveled to Timbuktu, bringing with them books, religious teachings, and scientific knowledge. The famous ruler Musa Musa of Mali, known for his legendary pilgrimage to Mecca in the 14th century, displayed the immense wealth of West Africa's gold trade, distributing so much gold along his journey that its value reportedly dropped in Egypt. On the Swahili coast, cities such as Kilwa, Zanzibar, and Mombasa thrived through trade with the Middle East, India, and China. East African merchants exported gold, ivory, and slaves, while importing textiles, spices, and porcelain. This exchange led to the development of the Swahili language, a blend of African Bantu and Arabic, reflecting the deep cultural connections formed through trade. China's economic power and technological advancements. China, under the Song dynasty, saw incredible economic prosperity fueled by trade, agricultural advancements, and technological innovations. The development of paper money revolutionized commerce, making transactions more efficient and reducing the reliance on heavy metal coins. The Song dynasty also expanded the Grand Canal, a massive waterway that facilitated internal trade between the northern and southern regions of China, allowing the rapid movement of grain, silk, and porcelain. Chinese merchants played a significant role in maritime trade, sailing across the South China Sea and the Indian Ocean to trade with Southeast Asia, India, and beyond. Chinese porcelain, known as China, was highly valued across the world, and demand for it surged as far as Africa and Europe. The use of advanced shipbuilding techniques, such as the junk ship and the compass, made Chinese vessels some of the most formidable in the world, enabling long-distance voyages and boosting trade networks. The role of trade in cultural exchange and global connections. Trade was not just about wealth. It was about the exchange of ideas, technology, and culture. As merchants traveled from one region to another, they brought with them new agricultural techniques, artistic influences, languages, and religious beliefs. The spread of paper-making technology from China to the Islamic world, and eventually to Europe, revolutionized knowledge preservation and communication. The introduction of spices from the East, such as pepper, cinnamon, and cloves, changed culinary traditions worldwide, making food not only more flavorful, but also more valuable. Even diseases traveled along trade routes, most notably the Black Death, which spread from Asia to Europe through merchant ships and trade caravans in the 14th century, devastating populations and altering economies. Trade was the foundation upon which civilizations flourished, enabling prosperity, cultural enrichment, and technological progress. The interconnected world of 1,000 years ago laid the groundwork for globalization, setting the stage for future exploration, economic expansion, and the blending of cultures across continents. 1,000 years ago, the world was shaped by the rise and fall of great civilizations, each leaving behind a legacy that influenced the course of history. Empires rose to power through conquest, trade, and cultural advancements, but just as they reached their peak, Many eventually declined due to war, internal strife, economic struggles, or external invasions. The ebb and flow of power was a constant theme, reminding us that no empire or civilization, no matter how mighty, was immune to the passage of time. The Islamic Golden Age and the fragmentation of the caliphates. One of the most influential civilizations of this era was the Islamic world, which experienced a golden age of knowledge, trade, and military expansion. Under the Abbasid Caliphate, 750 to 1258, centered in Baghdad, scholars in fields such as mathematics, medicine, astronomy, and philosophy thrived. The House of Wisdom in Baghdad became a center for learning, where scholars from different backgrounds translated Greek, Persian, and Indian texts, preserving and expanding upon the knowledge of previous civilizations. However, despite this cultural and intellectual brilliance, the Abbasid Caliphate began to weaken due to internal divisions, economic decline, and external threats. By the 10th century, the once unified Islamic Empire fractured into smaller, competing states. The Fatimid Caliphate in Egypt and the Umayyads of Al-Andalus in Spain emerged as powerful rivals. Eventually, in 1258, the Mongols sacked Baghdad, marking the official end of the Abbasid Caliphate as a dominant power. Despite the fall of the Abbasids, Islamic civilization remained influential. The Ottoman Empire, the Mamluks of Egypt, and the Delhi Sultanate in India rose in their place, continuing the spread of Islamic culture, architecture, and scientific achievements. The Byzantine Empire, the Eastern Roman legacy. The Byzantine Empire, the Eastern continuation of the Roman Empire, was one of the most enduring civilizations of the medieval period. With its capital in Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul, the Byzantines were a powerful force in trade, military strategy, and religious influence. Under emperors like Justinian I, the empire expanded its territories, codified Roman laws into the Justinian Code, and constructed architectural marvels such as the Hagia Sophia. However, the empire faced continuous threats from both the east and the west. The Seljuk Turks and later the Ottoman Turks chipped away at Byzantine lands, while internal conflicts and political instability weakened the empire. By 1204, the Fourth Crusade, originally intended to reclaim the Holy Land, instead led to the sacking of Constantinople by Latin Christian forces, further crippling Byzantine strength. The empire briefly recovered but never regained its former glory. Finally, in 1453, the Ottomans, under Sultan Mehmed II, conquered Constantinople, marking the definitive end of the Byzantine Empire. The Mongol Empire, the largest land empire in history. One of the most remarkable rises to power in history was that of the Mongol Empire, led by Genghis Khan in the early 13th century. Starting as nomadic tribes in the vast steppes of Central Asia, the Mongols united under Genghis Khan's leadership, launching military campaigns that created the largest contiguous land empire in history. The Mongols conquered vast territories, including China, Persia, Russia, and parts of Eastern Europe. They revolutionized warfare with their advanced cavalry tactics, psychological warfare, and adaptability. While they were feared for their brutality in battle, the Mongols also promoted trade and cultural exchange, revitalizing the Silk Road and connecting the East and West like never before. The Pax Mongolica, or Mongol Peace, facilitated the free movement of goods, people, and ideas, leading to significant economic and intellectual growth. However, the Mongol Empire eventually fragmented due to internal power struggles and the difficulty of governing such vast lands. After Genghis Khan's death, the empire was divided into 4 khanates, each ruled by his descendants. By the late 14th century, the Mongols had lost control over most of their territories, though their influence remained deeply embedded in the cultures they had conquered. Medieval Europe, the rise of kingdoms and the age of chivalry. In Europe, the fall of the Western Roman Empire, 476 CE, had left a fragmented political landscape dominated by feudal lords and warring kingdoms. However, by the 11th century, powerful states began to emerge, shaping the foundations of modern Europe. The Holy Roman Empire, ruled by Germanic kings, sought to revive the legacy of Rome, though it was plagued by conflicts between the emperor and the pope. The Normans, originally Viking settlers in northern France, rose to prominence by conquering England in 1066 under William the Conqueror, establishing the foundations of the English monarchy. The French Capetian dynasty, the Spanish Christian kingdoms, and the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth also expanded their influence. Medieval Europe also witnessed the Crusades, a series of religious wars fought between Christians and Muslims for control of the Holy Land. While the Crusades led to significant cultural exchanges and trade expansion, they also brought destruction, economic strain, and long-term tensions between Christian and Muslim societies. The Black Death, 1347 to 1351, further reshaped Europe, wiping out nearly one-third of the population. The plague weakened feudalism, as labor shortages forced lords to grant more freedoms to peasants, leading to economic and social transformations that would eventually contribute to the Renaissance and the Age of Exploration. The decline of African and American civilizations. In Africa, the once mighty empires of Ghana, Mali, and Songhai flourished due to trade, particularly in gold and salt. However, as trade routes shifted and European maritime powers emerged, these kingdoms faced decline. The rise of Atlantic trade and European exploration disrupted African economies, paving the way for new global dynamics. In the Americas, civilizations such as the Maya, Toltec, and Mississippian cultures reached great heights of architectural and scientific achievement. However, environmental changes, internal strife, and warfare led to their decline even before European contact. The Aztecs and the Inca, powerful empires of the 15th century, would later be conquered by Spanish invaders, marking the end of indigenous dominance in the Americas. The lessons of rise and fall. The civilizations of 1,000 years ago remind us that power is never permanent. Empires rise through ambition, innovation, and strength, but fall due to internal weaknesses, external threats, and the passage of time. However, their legacies endure through their cultural contributions, architectural wonders, philosophical ideas, and the lessons they leave behind for future generations. As we reflect on the journey of 1,000 years ago, we see a world shaped by ambition, resilience, and transformation. The rise and fall of great civilizations, the relentless pursuit of knowledge, the connections forged through trade and cultural exchange, all of these moments have left an indelible mark on human history. Though empires crumbled and new powers emerged, the spirit of innovation and exploration continued to drive humanity forward. The past is not just a collection of stories, but a mirror reflecting the lessons we must carry into the future. It reminds us that strength alone does not sustain a civilization. Wisdom, adaptability, and unity do. The achievements of those before us continue to inspire progress, while their mistakes serve as warnings against arrogance, division, and complacency. Today, we stand at the crossroads of history, much like those who lived 1,000 years ago. The world is still evolving, shaped by new challenges and opportunities. As we move forward, let us embrace the wisdom of the past, honor the legacies of those who came before us, and build a future that future generations will look back upon with pride. The journey of history never truly ends. It simply continues, carried forward by those willing to learn, to lead, and to dream.